Hello and welcome to another exciting tutorial. So in this one I'm teaching you how to drag and drop an item on your web page using JavaScript. Okay, so this is a purely JavaScript tutorial, so let's dive in. So to start with, you need a text editor. I'm using Sublime Text. You can use any text editor of your choice, even Notepad, and you also need a browser. So this is the browser. And I went ahead and created a folder. So you can create a folder anywhere on your hard drive. It doesn't matter in this case. So I have a folder here called drag. This is where we will put our file. Okay, so open Sublime Text and create a new file. And I'm going to save this to the same folder that I've created. And I'm going to call this one index.html. Save, right? Okay, so if I go to my browser now, I can actually open that one, index.html. There we go. So it's empty for now. So what we want to do is put an image so that we have something to actually see. Okay, so we'll be dragging this image around. So let me choose an image in here. Okay. Let me copy this one and put it in my folder. All right. So let me rename it to one.jpg just because I'm lazy in typing. And let's go back here. So let's create some HTML. HTML, like so. The title will be drag. And then I want to create an image with a source one.jpg. Oops. And I want to add some styles here. I'm going to say width 100 pixels. That's really all I'm concerned about. But the important thing is I need to have an ID here, and I'm going to call this one what ID will I call it? I'll just say image for simplicity. And then I want to have a couple of divs here where I can drag it to. So I'll be like div, div, div. Then okay, let me add some styles here. Style tag. Okay, so all this is just cosmetic, not really part of the dragging process. So I just want to put a style for divs and say width. I'll give it a width of 150, let's say 200 pixels, a height of 200 pixels, and then also a border so we can actually see what's going on. I'll say solid, thin, gray. Okay, this should do it. Then let me put some margins as well. Margin 10 pixels. Maybe that's too much. Let's say 6 pixels, something like this. All right, so let's refresh the page and see what we've got. So I have this image here, and I have these boxes down here, which is pretty awesome. But let me put a display for the boxes, display of inline block, so that they can go sideways instead, something like this. So what I want to do is be able to drag this image into here or there or there. Okay, and that's pretty easy to do. So the first thing we want to do is go to the image and make it draggable. So I'll go to the end here and just write the word draggable. We'll say draggable is equal to true. I think if you just write draggable, it will still work without putting the true. But let's refresh, and now as you can see, we are able to drag it. I think images are draggable by default, I think. Okay. Now, the important thing is we have to be notified when the dragging itself starts so that we can take note of what we are dragging, right? So to do that, I will put an event listener on the image itself. I'll say on drag start. So there are a few events that happen when you're dragging. So the first one is on drag start, and then there's on drag there's drag start, there's drag enter, drag leave, drag over, and drop. So we're going to see all those. The one we need now is drag start, and we're going to run a function once the dragging starts. So I'm just going to call the function drag start like this and pass in the event like that. Very good. Okay, and then on the divs themselves, we want to prevent the default behavior of these divs, because if I come here, let me open this. If I come here and drag an image into the div, what happens is that the whole page is replaced with that image, and this is not what we want to happen. So we have to monitor the on drag over. So you see the suggestions here, there's drag end, drag enter, drag exit, and so on. The one I want is drag over, so I will send that to drag over. We'll create that function as well, like this. And what more do we need? Okay, we also want to know when something is dropped into these guys, so we're going to say on drop, and we're going to call the function drop as well, for simplicity, like this. All right, so let's recap a little bit. So here we want to know when the image dragging starts. Okay, so we've put an event on the image itself. This is on the item that is going to be dragged. So whatever that item is, it could be another div. So you just put on drag start and send it to a specific function. Here on drag over, we want to have a function that will run, and on drop, so when drag over is when there's an item, like when I'm dragging an item and I haven't yet let go and I'm over the item, so that's drag over. Okay, and then drop obviously is drop. So let's go down here and create some scripts. So I'll create a script here, and let's make sure all these functions are catered for. So function, there's what, drag underscore over. Let's put E as the event, and I'm going to put some space there. So since there are three functions, let me duplicate this 3 times. So there's drag over, there's drag, let me start with drag start here. There we go, drag over, and finally drop. There we go. So now the whole idea is simple here. So when the dragging starts, we want to take note of what this item is. So I'm going to get its ID. So to do that, I will transfer that information inside the drag event. So how I do that is by saying let's say e.data transfer. So there's this property called data transfer dot set data. So we want to set the data in the data transfer. Now to set the data, you put a key value pair. So the key is going to be text, so you can use any key here. And what do I want to get? I want to get whatever the item is. So to get the item being dragged, we say e.target, that's the item being dragged, dot, I could say dot ID, something like that. Okay, so that's the ID. So all I'm doing is grabbing the ID of the item that I've dragged, which is image in this case. And that's it for here. But then when we go to drag over, we don't want it to replace the whole page with the image. So we will say e.prevent the default action, default, something like this. That's all we do in here. And also on drop, we have to prevent the default action. Otherwise, if we drop the image, we replace the page. So we drop that. But on dropping, what we want to do is move that item which was sent in here and put it in the new found place. So remember that the E here represents where we are dropping the item, because this is what will evoke that that event here. So it's the div. In here, the E represents the image that we are dragging, because on drag start, that's what's signaling that. So on drop, this is the item we are dropping. So we'll say e.dataTransfer.getData. So we're getting the data that we set here, and that's text. So we don't need this because we are not setting the data, we just need to get it. So let's assign that to a variable. Let's say var id is equal to, right? And then I will say document dot get element by id, whatever that id is, and this one is a variable item. I'll just call it item. So the item we're transferring is this one, and E is where we're transferring it to. So what I want to do now is say e.target dot append child item, and that's it. We are done. This should work just fine. So let's go and give it a test run. So let me drag and drop. You see the image is in there. I can drag and drop in here or drop it in there. As simple as that. That's how you do it. So the fact that these are moving around like this is simply because of the poor styling of the items, but has nothing to do with the drag and drop itself. So that's how you move an item from one place to another. Now imagine you want to move a div that contains extra information. This is just one item here, but we want to move a whole entire div. Maybe let's say you want to create something that is used to dock information. So let's see how we can do that. So let me restyle things a little bit. Now the image here will remain as it is, actually I will just need to copy the ID and the event. There we go. So let's remove our image here. Let's replace this with, okay, before I remove it, we need to compare. So let me say div like this. Now this div will have other things inside. So there is a div. Now we have to give it an ID. We'll give it an ID of panel because it's a panel. And this will be the panel header, something like this. Panel header, something like that. And let's write this is a panel, something like this. And then let me put another div here and put some text. So lorem ipsum can come in handy here. All right, so let's add some styles here just to style it a little bit. I'm just going to say height is equal to 100 pixels, width 100 pixels, something like that. And on this one, this is just some quick styling. I will say background color gray, and then the color will be white, and the height will be 30 pixels. Okay, so let's see what we have done here. Ooh, so this is our panel here, and it's not looking too good. I wonder why. Okay, height, width, height 30 pixels. All right, so let me make sure that I get all these on drag start. Cut that. So what I want to be able to drag is the panel header. Okay, so I will put the drag start here, and then it has an ID already, and then I'll make sure that draggable is equal to true. So I'll bring that here as well, and then I can remove my image. So let's see what we have now. Okay, so I don't know why this this outer div is not, oh, because it's 100 right. Oh, because there are these other styles up here. I forgot. Okay, so what we will do to avoid all these collisions is to give these guys some IDs. So I'll give these IDs as sockets, whatever you can put there, and then let's put sockets here, so that those styles only apply to these guys that are down here, these three, like this. So this is another panel at the top here. Okay, and this top panel here, I want to have a border so I can see where it ends. Border, solid, thin, oops, solid, thin, let's put something like AAA for a color, and then I can also put a background color of EEE, something just slight gray like that. So let me refresh, and you see, so this is the panel right here. We can continue styling, but this is not a styling tutorial, so I just want to show you that I can keep dragging this panel into here. So you see the panel is in there, and I can drag it in there, and I can drag it in there. But the problem that's happening here is that you see the panel only is the only thing that's coming in here, and the text has remained. So this is why I made this section as well, so that you can see how to drag everything in here. Now, if you remember very well here, when we click and drag on the panel is inside, this panel header is inside this larger panel. So we have to get the parent's ID instead. So all we have to do is go here where we are getting the data, and we're going to say e.target.parent node.id, something like this. Okay. Now, if your session is more complex than this, so before I go to that, let me just make sure that this is actually working. So you can see now I'm dragging this into different locations like that. Now, if your scene or your page is more complex than this, meaning this panel that you're dragging is not really the immediate child of this one, what you can do is specify specifically what you want to be dragged once you drag this item. So you can do that by creating your own attribute. So here, instead of the where there's ID and all that, I can create my own attribute here. I can call it just something like drag this, something like this. Drag this is equal to, so then I can specify what I want to actually move when this is dragged. Also, I can just say move this, whatever this is, move this, and then I'll get the particular ID, which is panel, and put it here. So it doesn't have to be the parent. I can tell it to move something else entirely. Okay, so I'll put panel right there, and then the way I get the variable here is by going there and saying e.target.getAttribute. I'm going to say get attribute, and open and closing. That's the attribute I want to get. Okay, that's simple. So whatever the attribute contains is going to be the ID of the item I should move. So this should work just as well. So I can move this here, move that there, move that there, or I can drag this, and what will happen is something else will show up in here. So let me put back my image. I wish I hadn't removed it that quickly. So image source, that one was 1.jpg. Okay, so I'm going to have a style, just a simple style of width, which is 100 pixels. Yeah, so the image, I'm going to give it an ID of image as I did last time. So instead, I can tell it when this is being dragged, move this is equal to image, which is the image itself. So you'll be surprised that instead of moving, okay, what's happening here? It's not Windows, it's supposed to be with, sorry about that. So let me refresh. All right, so we have our image and we have our panel, but I can click and drag the panel here and the image will move instead. See that? Okay, very good. Now imagine you want to duplicate these. You don't want to copy, to move the item itself. Let's say, for example, for argument's sake, I want to, so let me remove the image. I don't need the image anymore. Let me use the panel instead. So let's say I want to make copies instead, right? So when I get here, instead of saying append child, I want to change this item. Instead of grabbing that item from there by ID. Okay, I have grabbed the item here, but what I want to do is say item is equal to item.clone. Actually, I have forgotten what this clone child, is that the one? No, I think it's just clone like this. So we are cloning the element, and now this item is equal to a clone of that one, and that's what we are appending. So let me confirm if I got that right. So let me drag, I haven't done this in a while. Okay, so something is wrong here. Let me go to my console and let's see. Item.clone is not a function. Well, I could have guessed that. Okay, let's go back here and see what the actual function name is. So I think the actual name is clone node, I think. Oh boy. Okay, so we are cloning the node. This, whatever this item is, we grab it and then we clone it, and then we actually append the clone. So fingers crossed that this is gonna work, and let's see this. Boom, it's working. And look at that. So now I can make clones of this. Look at that. I can actually clone them right in here. Keep cloning them like that. Look at that. That's awesome. Okay, so this is how you drag and drop stuff around in JavaScript, which is pretty easy. So hopefully you've learned something new in here, and I will see you in another video.